My name is Dustin, and I am a 35-year-old man. I was married to Kathy, who was 32 at the time we got divorced. I work as an engineer at a local company and earn a reasonable income every month. We have a 6-year-old son named Ron. I first met Kathy through a mutual friend who introduced us. We stayed in touch and eventually started dating. After about 3 years of dating, we decided to get married. For our honeymoon, we traveled to Phuket, Thailand. While on our honeymoon, Kathy made an unusual remark. She was observing the local men and said, "These guys are smaller than the average white man. Do you think they're smaller down there too?" I laughed it off, assuming it was just a silly comment. Kathy has always been passionate about fitness. She regularly went to the gym and worked hard to stay in shape. When Kathy was pregnant, I went out of my way to take care of her. I cooked for her, occasionally fed her in bed, and did everything I could to pamper her during her pregnancy. My mother had advised me to keep her happy, saying it would ensure a healthy and cheerful baby. When Ron was born, I knew it was time to focus more on my work, as I needed to earn more to support my growing family. When Ron turned 5, Kathy decided to return to the gym to shed the weight she had gained during her pregnancy. That was the point where everything in my life started to go downhill. Within just 2 months, Kathy lost almost 20 pounds, and I was astonished by her transformation. I noticed her improving every day, but I hadn't realized the amount of weight she had lost. Curious, I asked her what her secret was. She explained that she had started training in martial arts, which helped her lose weight quickly. Inspired by her progress, I decided to return to the gym I used to train at. I resumed working out, and after a few months, I also started seeing improvements in my physical fitness. However, I wasn't losing weight as rapidly as Kathy was. One day, I asked Kathy if I could train with her trainer to accelerate my progress. She seemed caught off guard and told me that her trainer's batch was full and wasn't accepting any more trainees. I found her response a bit strange, but didn't dwell on it and let it go. A few days later, as I was leaving work, the receptionist at the front desk asked me to wait. She told me that someone had come looking for me. I asked if the person had left a message, and she said no. When I inquired about the person's appearance, she mentioned it was an Asian man with a tattoo on his neck. I brushed it off since I didn't know anyone fitting that description. The next day, Kathy asked me if I'd like to watch a Muay Thai match. She mentioned she had front row tickets. I was surprised and asked how she managed to get such good seats. She said her trainer was competing in the event. I agreed to go, as I was excited to watch a Muay Thai match up close. At the event, after watching 3 fights, it was her trainer's turn. It was a 150-pound fight. When the fighters entered the ring, I noticed that both of them had tattoos on their necks. I chuckled at the coincidence, recalling the man who had come to my office with a neck tattoo. The bell rang, and Kathy's trainer knocked out his opponent within 15 seconds. The fight was entirely one-sided, and the winner began celebrating. I excused myself for a quick trip to the restroom. When I returned, I saw Kathy from a distance hugging her trainer. I felt a wave of anger, but told myself that maybe she was just being supportive since the guy had won. Such things happen among teammates, I thought. On our way home, I asked Kathy why she hugged the fighter. She said it was just a small hug to congratulate her trainer, adding, "It's not like I'm sleeping with him." She sounded annoyed and didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. Later at home, she accused me of ruining her mood, saying she was happy about her trainer's victory, but I had spoiled the moment. I apologized and tried to smooth things over. The next morning, I woke up and realized Kathy wasn't in bed. I started looking for her and eventually found her in the kitchen. As I entered the kitchen, I saw Kathy standing there, completely naked, with her phone on the table. She was on a video call, and I overheard her say, "This is your prize for today." Curious and concerned, I walked up to the phone and picked it up. To my surprise, she hadn't sent the video to anyone yet. Before I could check further, she quickly explained, "I was making this for you. After our fight, I wanted to make it up to you." Relieved but still skeptical, I walked up to her, turned her onto the kitchen table, and made sure to give her an unforgettable experience. When we were done, she collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily. She smiled and said, We should do this more often. I was foolish to believe her that night. The next morning, I woke up feeling happy and energized. I headed to the gym for a workout. Since it was cold, I wore a beanie and a hooded jacket. After finishing my session, I walked out to my car to head home. As I approached my car, a man walked toward me. He was about 5 feet 7 inches, 170 centimeters, tall, and as he got closer, I recognized him. It was Kathy's trainer. He came straight up to me and said, "I love your wife. I make love to her twice a day and send her home with my seed in her. Stop touching her and leave her immediately." I froze in shock. His words hit me like a brick. I stood there, confused and angry, not knowing how to react. Before I could respond, 2 of my training partners arrived and noticed the situation. They asked if everything was all right. The trainer, unfazed, started hurling insults and threats, saying I needed to leave Kathy, or he'd beat me up right there. Still stunned, I asked him to clarify what he was talking about, and if he was sure he wanted to confront me. At that moment, he declared, "Kathy is my love. She belongs to me." He took off his jacket, raised his fists, and got into a fighting stance, moving like an experienced fighter. I had to make a decision, fight or back down. I chose to stand my ground. I removed my cap, revealing my cauliflower ears, a clear sign of my wrestling background. For a moment, he hesitated, but then he shook his head and raised his fists again. "You see, I'm a former high school wrestler. I'm 6 feet 3 inches and weigh 260 pounds. This man at 150 pounds thought he could intimidate me. He threw the first punch, catching me on the eyebrow and causing blood to drip down my face. Smirking, he taunted, "You want more?" Before he could finish his sentence, I lunged at him with a double-leg takedown. I lifted him more than 6 feet in the air and slammed him to the ground. When someone hits the ground from that height, it knocks the air out of their lungs, making them feel like they're drowning. Not done yet, I picked him up and slammed him onto his car's hood, denting the metal. Then I lifted him again and smashed him down once more. He lay there like a crumpled piece of paper, defeated and broken. My training partners recorded the entire incident and reassured me they'd act as witnesses if the man decided to file a complaint. But my day wasn't over. More shocking truths awaited me. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water to calm down. One of my friends had sent me the video of the fight. I called Kathy into the living room and asked her to sit down. Smiling, I handed her my phone and played the video. Her face transformed from confusion to horror. Tears began streaming down her cheeks as she yelled, "Why did you beat him up?"
I stared at her, furious, and asked, "Why did you sleep with him?" She froze, unable to speak. I repeated the exact words her trainer had said to me earlier. Finally, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She admitted, "It started with curiosity. I didn't mean for it to happen." I shouted, "Curiosity about what?" Through her tears, she explained that ever since she started training with her trainer, she'd been curious about whether Asian men were as good in bed as people say. It began with harmless flirting, but one day during training, she accidentally kicked him in the groin. She apologized profusely and later went to his office to apologize again. That's when he flirted back, showing her where she had hit him. She claimed she didn't know what came over her, but before she realized it, they were having sex. She admitted that it had been going on ever since. Through her sobs she insisted, "I love you, Dustin. You're the only man I truly love." Kathy looked at me through her tears and said I should treat this whole incident as nothing more than casual sex with a random guy. She claimed it was just physical attraction and didn't mean anything emotional. "There's no love involved," she said. "It's just lust, and it can be overlooked." I stayed silent. After a moment, I picked up the phone and called her mother. I told her everything. As I was speaking, Kathy started screaming at me, panicked. On the other end, her mother began crying, overwhelmed by what I had shared. After telling her everything, I hung up. Kathy, now furious, shouted, "Why would you tell my mother?" I calmly replied, "Just think of it as I told her a joke." I sat down, ignoring her rage. Kathy kept yelling, but her words faded into the background. I felt like the world had gone silent. I could see her gesturing wildly, her voice muffled, as if I was watching everything happen from a distance. After a few moments, I snapped back to reality. Looking her directly in the eyes, I said, "Get out. Talk to a lawyer and start the negotiations." Her anger turned to desperation as she fell to her knees. "Think of our son," she pleaded. "You'll ruin his life if we get divorced." I smiled bitterly. "That's a good point," I said. "I wonder if you thought about him while you were screwing that fighter. I hope the sex was worth it. I hope you treasure the memories of every moment with him, because I'm filing a written complaint with his gym. He'll lose his job and maybe he'll go back to Thailand. If he truly loves you, maybe he'll take you with him." I stood up and pointed to the door. "Now, pack your bags and get out of my house." Kathy sobbed, refusing to move. I walked out saying, "Don't wake our son, and be gone by the time I return." I called my mother-in-law again, repeating everything and informing her that I would be filing for divorce. When I returned home later, I saw Kathy leaving with her mother. Inside the house, my son was still asleep. I stood by his bed, tears streaming down my face, consumed by the realization that he would now grow up in a broken home. Unable to hold back, I collapsed on the floor near his bed, curled up and cried. The next morning I met with a lawyer. I shared everything, including the video of the confrontation with Kathy's trainer. The lawyer was shocked by the events but assured me he would fight to secure custody of my son. Following his advice, I filed a formal complaint with Kathy's gym. As a result, the trainer was fired, and he also lost his fight contracts with promotions. The video of me confronting and beating him up had gone viral in underground circles, adding further damage to his reputation. I never spoke to Kathy again after that day. The court eventually awarded custody of my son to Kathy. Broke my heart. On top of that, I had to give up my house as part of the alimony settlement and pay child support every month. Kathy's moment of curiosity had shattered my life. My bank account was drained, and my future felt uncertain. I wanted to leave the city and start fresh, but I stayed for my son. I couldn't imagine life without being close to him. Now I'm stuck in a painful limbo, forced to deal with Kathy occasionally because of our son. The thought of starting a new relationship feels impossible. My mind is clouded by everything that has happened. This is my life now. I guess not every story has a happy ending.